Hello, freak bitches.
I got a question for you, man.
Okay.
So, I've been a fan of you for a long time, right? So what?
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. What what made you make the switch from like being a moon landing denier to like
That's a good question.
Crazy if you don't think we
No,
went
I don't think we're crazy. No, this is my take on it. Absolutely, I don't know enough about astrophysics, about space travel,
Right.
about the science that's the work that's been done, about how to get a rocket to the moon and back. I definitely don't know enough.
It's rocket science.
And I've looked at a lot of very compelling documentaries that explain why they think it was hoaxed. And they'll show you some footage, and you can look at some of the footage, and it looks fake as fuck. There's some footage that, to me, looks really doctored. There's
to this day?
Yeah, to this day. There's some when you ever seen ones where it looks like they're on wires, like the astronauts are on wires?
I have.
There's some where there's a video where they look like they're on a trampoline. They're bouncing around on trampolines.
Mm-hmm.
The physics are different in different videos. This is where it gets weird. Like the physics are different from the Apollo 11 moon landing. We see them waddle around on the surface of the moon. They're moving at like half speed. And then you see them in other ones, like the one where they bounce around the air. You're like, wow, they're moving different. They're in the same thing, but it looks different. The first one was very grainy. They showed it on a projection screen.
Right.
There's a couple different possibilities. One possibility is it just looks weird because it's on the moon and your brain is trying to interpret it and your brain's going, well, that's fake, because you don't really understand what 1/6 Earth's gravity really does to a body.
It is, yeah.
That's one possibility.
Right.
Another possibility, which has been shown to be true, is that some of the stuff that they passed off as being legitimate photographs of space travel was actually test runs where they blacked out the background and pretended that they were in space. And there's one really clear example of this. It's Michael Collins. Michael Collins, who was the guy who was aboard Apollo 11.
Right.
And Gemini 15, there's a photo of him in the middle of a, what is it when they walk around outside the spacewalk? They call it a spacewalk? Yeah. Why does that seem like a bad word? It's like spacewalk. Like it doesn't seem like that's the official title. Well, it's in the middle of a spacewalk.
It's probably something more.
Yeah.
A little more syllables.
Yeah, something slicker. Anyway, so he's doing the spacewalk and he's got this harness on. He's holding on to this like thing, and it was apparently just an image that had already been published of him in a training exercise, and they blacked out the background and flipped the picture upside down.
That's the joint right there.
It's the same exact photo. Same exact photo. I mean, people have lined it up and switched it over. It's the same photo. It's just been edited. So the one on the left was them practicing how to use these. I don't guess that the harness is some sort of a thing that he's hanging on to. I guess it moves him around a little bit.
Right.
They were trying to practice it on the left, and on the right, they just passed it off. But those are publicity photos, right?
Right.
So you got to go, well, okay, well, who approves of publicity photos? It could easily be just some idiot who works in the publicity department who did marketing, who didn't think they had enough photos from the moon that were good of spacewalks. It's probably insanely difficult to take a spacewalk photo. Right. So does that mean that they faked the moon landing? No, but it means that people fake things. So you got to be really objective and looking at that. Right. Okay, so people say fake things. They definitely filmed a lot of the training exercises that they did of the moon landing. Right. They filmed a lot of shit. They definitely did. If that has already been proven, that they took this fake photograph and they tried to pass it off as a real spacewalk, it's entirely possible that some of the stuff that they filmed, they made out to look like they were on the moon when they were not. Right. But does that mean they didn't go to the moon? No, it doesn't. And so when I was saying it proves that they didn't go to the moon, my critique of myself is that I didn't look at it objectively because I wanted one conclusion to be true. And I wanted that conclusion to be that the moon landing was fake. So I looked at it and I was saying to myself, okay, did I come to this conclusion because there's a lot of evidence that shows it to be fake, or have I seen a lot of evidence that looks fake? And does that mean that they didn't go to the moon? Right. No, it doesn't. There's a bunch of different possibilities. There's a ton of different possibilities. There's also the possibility that whatever photographs they took can get severely damaged in the radiation of space, and that it was really difficult to do.
Right.
that's possible too, and that they decided somehow or another that they were going to pass off these, that they actually did go, and they decided they're going to pass off some of these fake videos. So there's a bunch of possibilities. The possibility that it looks fake because I'm dumb and because I don't understand anything about the physics of 1/6 Earth's gravity, and it just looks weird because it's shitty film, it's 1969. That's possibility number one. Number two is they fake some things. Or number three is they didn't really have good footage because, like, you couldn't take film through the airport. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like, people would go through those radar detectors, and your film would get jacked, and they weren't responsible.
I didn't have any film, but I know
people that I have friends that are photographers, and my uncle's a photographer, and he would tell me you can't send the film. Like, if you take a roll of film and awesome
so
pictures.
How would they get it through?
I don't know. I don't know what the fuck they did. But I know that some film has been damaged. Or maybe it's an urban myth. Maybe find out if film got damaged by those radar things at the airport. X-rays at the airport.
I could appreciate the mindset, though, of looking at your opinion objectively and saying, am I tripping? Let's look at the facts and say, I'm just not really sure. I think that's the problem with people today, and people period, is that they're afraid to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're super afraid.
It's like, to me, ignorance is such a gift. Like, it just gives you an opportunity to learn some shit if you're humble enough. Like, don't assume you know shit. Like, even the shit I feel like I know, I still feel like I don't know.
Yeah, well, that seems you have a very healthy ego for a big, young, fucking super athlete.
It's fucking football, man. Like,
I know, but I'm saying your
ego.
ego is very healthy. You have a really good way of looking at things. I think that's the right way to be, man. You can't be married to like ideas and opinions like that because they're not you, but we think that they are. They're like an extension of us. So we want to win these arguments. We want to be right. I think it gets real scary when you want to be right, and then you're willing to ignore evidence that might show that you're wrong.
Right.
And that's how I felt about myself. And by the way, if you wanted a conspiracy that's a good one, that seems like it might be possible, the moon landing is one of the best ones, and this is why it's so attractive. Between 1969 and 1973,
you still on the fence about this, huh?
No, I'm not at all.
Okay.
But I'm on the I don't know shit fence. That's where I live.
All right.
But between that
got a lot
time,
of facts on this side. I'm with you though.
They sent, I think it was 7 missions. 6 of them were successful. The only one that wasn't successful was Apollo 13, right? They sent these fucking people around the moon, 250,000 plus miles out there and back. But ever since then, all they've been able to do is get people into near Earth orbit. Ever since then, like the highest anyone's ever gone, I think it's 400 miles. So they went from 260,000 miles all the way to the moon and back. To 400 miles. Everything is like inside. And they've never gone through the Van Allen radiation belts. They've never gone into deep space and returned. They haven't done that since 1973.
I thought, and I could be wrong, but I thought it was because of like funding.
Could be.
Like, because,
meanwhile, LACMA's got funds. Show me how that makes sense. You don't want to fund space travel. You want to fund that fucking acrylic box.
Amber box. It's a great adjective, by the way. That's perfect.
It is a great one. I don't think that I know whether or not we went to the moon, but I'm telling you that if you wanted a juicy conspiracy to get excited about,
I've looked into it.
It's the best one to get excited about. They lost all the data.
I see, because like I see, like, you go down the YouTube wormhole. I start watching Barry Sanders highlights, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at JFK being Michael Jackson or some shit. But I just don't see what the motive would be. Like, what is the fucking
The Cold War. First of all, we wanted to beat the Russians because we were in a race to see who can get to the moon. And here's one of the things that we do know for a fact: the Russians faked a bunch of shit. They faked a bunch of footage. Yeah, Yuri Gagarin, who was the first man in space. They had a video.
You might be an expert on this, man.
I studied this. I debated a guy who was a really nice guy, but Phil Plait, who's a bad astronomer, badastronomer.com.
Okay.
And he was a lot of things he wasn't willing to admit, though, that were unfortunate, because maybe he could have convinced me more if he was. And one of the big ones was that Werner von Braun was a Nazi. They hired a bunch of Nazis to run the space program. It was called Operation Paperclip. And what Operation Paperclip was they took a bunch of Nazi scientists and relocated them to the United States. We lost some of them to Russia. Russia scooped up some of them. But when we ended the World War II and Nazi Germany collapsed, we went in and took the scientists. Well, Werner von Braun was the head of a rocket factory in Berlin, where they used to hang the 5 slowest Jews in front of the rocket factory for all the other workers to see. Werner von Braun, the Simon Wiesenthal Center said, if Werner von Braun was alive today, he'd be punished for crimes against humanity.
This is news to me.
No, Werner von Braun was a straight-up Nazi. And this guy was not willing to admit that.
Right.
You know, it's like, well, you know, just because someone's in Germany. No. No, he was a Nazi. He was a Nazi. Whether or not he actually killed anybody, maybe he had to be a Nazi.
Right.
I mean, we're not saying that, look, if you're fucked and you're in this neighborhood and that it overcomes the entire neighborhood, you want to keep your family alive, so you put that thing on your jacket sleeve, you put that swastika on, and you Sieg Heil like everybody else. Maybe you're not really a Nazi ideologically. Maybe you're not a Nazi in your heart. Maybe you're just trying to stay alive. That's entirely possible too. But he was a Nazi. He was a fucking Nazi. And they had slaves that were running rocket factories in Berlin where they were figuring out how to make rockets.
That's brand new. I need to.
Yeah. Operation Paperclip. Cold War, President Truman authorized Operation Paperclip in August of 1945. The U.S. Army secretly admitted 88 German scientists and engineers to help in development of rocket technology, including Werner von Braun, Arthur Rudolph, and Hubertus Strugold. Hubertus. That's a great name.
It's not a great name, bro.
Bring that back. Hubertus. If you have a fucking stud kid who's like one of the strongest men in the world, his name is Hubertus.
He's named after
that's
a
my
Nazi.
son, Hubertus.
Fuck that.
Oh, that's true. That's true. He was named after a Nazi. So there was like something in the debate that guy was not willing to admit, which made me even more skeptical that he was right about the other stuff. The other thing was that they, like, moon rocks that they've collected from the moon have turned out to not really be moon rocks. Like, a bunch of them for sure have been tested by scientists, and they've found that these rocks are from another planet. But there was a rock that they gave to whoever's the head of Holland, and it was personally given with a plaque by Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, and it turned out to be petrified wood. Moon rock given to Holland by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin is fake. It's a moon rock given to the Dutch Prime Minister by the Apollo 11 astronauts in 1969, turned out to be a fake. So they were giving people pieces of petrified wood saying, this is for you, we went to the moon, God bless America.
With 308,000 euros.
Now, there's a bunch of possibilities, okay? Let's just be honest about this, because this story is from 2009. It's entirely possible that between 1969... there's multiple sources, but that's the Telegraph.
But that's
a legit newspaper.
But you got to trace the source.
For sure. What I'm saying is that it's entirely possible that someone stole that moon rock and replaced it with that. That's possible.
All right.
That's possible. Or it's possible they just had some fake rocks. Here's the thing. Bill Clinton had a quote in his book, in one of his books. I think his book is called My Life. And he had a quote about the moon landing and a story about him having this conversation with a carpenter. And that this carpenter said that he didn't believe the moon landing. He goes, them television fellers, they can make anything look real. And he said, this is a quote in Bill Clinton's fucking book. He said, back then I thought that guy was a quack. But after, or a crank, whatever, crazy person. But after 8 years in the White House, I was wondering if he wasn't ahead of his time.
Oh, wow.
This is a guy that was the fucking president of the United States. And he's talking specifically about an old carpenter telling him the moon landing was fake. And then he says, I wondered after 8 years in the White House if that guy wasn't ahead of his time.
Causation, correlation.
Yeah. No, look, could be bullshit.
Yeah.
Could be bullshit. 100%. It could be just a good story.
But I think that's the thing about conspiracy theories. Is like they lead you on all these dead-end chases.
Oh, yeah. So to answer the long answer of your question, that's where I stood on this whole moon landing thing. That's why I came around to thinking it a different way.
Right.
I was way too convinced that I was right.
Right.
I'm like, I'm convinced I was right, but it's fucking real low levels of understanding of any of the science of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's
know?
the problem is, as a society, we're so scientifically illiterate,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that causes so much room for speculation. And you're kind of a prisoner of people who are masters of their craft. You're kind of a prisoner to their quote unquote agenda. I don't want to put that bad of a term on it, but you're kind of a prisoner of that because we don't have any choice but to take their word for it,
Right.
or to pursue it yourself.
Right, to learn about what they're talking about yourself, to
Yeah.
know if they're right or not.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely the case, right? Because you know that's the case in almost everything else.